The lonely single dad opened his door for one night, not knowing who he was protecting. The rain hadn't stopped since midnight. Sheets of water poured down the quiet streets, turning the world outside into a watercolor blur. Inside a modest house tucked behind a row of maple trees, the air was still. Adam Brooks, 35, had just returned from his night shift. His maintenance badge was still clipped to his soaked jacket. He hung it by the door, careful not to drip water onto the mat. His boots thudded softly on the wooden floor as he moved through the house, quiet and practiced. He paused by a small door cracked slightly open. Inside, his 6-year-old daughter, Sophie, slept soundly. A soft pink nightlight glowed beside her bed, casting warm shadows on the wall. He stood for a moment, listening to her slow, even breaths. In the kitchen, Adam poured a mug of hot water and sat down at the worn wooden table. He flipped open a notebook filled with maintenance reports and pending tasks. His face showed exhaustion, but also patience, an expression worn smooth by years of solitude and quiet responsibility. Then came the knock. A quick, sharp sound at the door broke the stillness. Adam looked up, frowning. He glanced at the clock, 2:17 a.m. He moved quietly toward the door, brushing aside the curtain just enough to peek through the side window. Under the porch light stood a young woman, soaked to the skin, arms tightly crossed, her head bowed. Long, blonde hair clung to her face and neck. She didn't move, except to shiver. Adam unlocked the door but opened it only slightly. His hand remained on the latch, his voice even. "What do you need?" The woman raised her head. Her face was pale, her lips trembled, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Panic, maybe. Shame. She spoke carefully, almost too softly to hear. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know where else to go. I lost my bag, my phone. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just need somewhere safe until morning." Adam didn't answer immediately. He glanced down the hallway again. Sophie's door was still closed. The house was silent. He looked at the woman once more. She didn't seem dangerous. She looked exhausted, wet, worn out. But there was something in her eyes. She was holding herself upright, barely, but she hadn't let go of her dignity. "I don't have much," he said, "but there's a couch, clean blanket, it's warm." The woman hesitated. Rain lashed harder against the porch roof. She gave a faint nod. "Thank you." Adam opened the door wider. "Shoes off there. My daughter's asleep." She stepped in slowly, dripping onto the mat, and kicked off her boots. She looked around the living room. Simple, clean, lived in. A tiny pink backpack leaned against the couch. Children's books filled a small shelf. A home, not just a house. Adam handed her a towel. "Dry off. I'll get something warm." She murmured her thanks, patting her arms and hair. Her fingers trembled. Adam returned with a folded sweatshirt, a thick blanket, and a pillow. "I'm Adam," he said. "You can stay on the couch tonight." She took the items carefully. "Linda, thank you. You don't even know who I am." "I don't need to," he said. "I just know no one should be standing in the rain at 2 in the morning." Linda blinked. Her eyes shone, but she said nothing. Adam turned to go, but paused to scribble a short note and set it beside the steaming mug of water on the table. Then he disappeared down the hall. Linda stood still for a moment before settling onto the couch. The sweatshirt hung loosely, but it was dry and smelled like clean cotton. She wrapped herself in the blanket, took a sip from the mug, and finally let herself exhale. Then she saw the note. "Extra blankets in the left closet. Hot water is yours. Please keep quiet. My daughter's a light sleeper." She read it again. Then again. No questions, no judgment, just care. Quiet, unspoken care. Her grip tightened around the mug. Her throat ached, but not from fear, from something else, something gentler. No one had looked at her like this in a long time. Not like a name, not like a problem to fix or a trophy to protect. Just A person. I forgot what this feels like, she whispered. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside, Linda felt safe, for the first time in days. She leaned back into the cushions. Her eyes began to close. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, just tonight, she wasn't alone. And neither was he. Linda woke to the sound of laughter. For a second, she didn't know where she was. The blanket around her smelled like clean cotton. The couch beneath her was lumpy but warm. Then she heard it again, a soft, bubbly giggle, and the smell of something slightly burnt drifted in from the kitchen. She sat up slowly. A little girl stood in the doorway, grinning wide, holding a stuffed bunny by one ear. Her blonde hair was in messy pigtails. She tilted her head. "You're the rain lady," she said proudly, like she had just solved a mystery. Linda blinked. "I guess I am." The girl laughed again and skipped toward the kitchen. Linda pushed back the blanket, ran a hand through her tangled hair, and stood. The floor was cool under her feet. She padded into the kitchen. Adam was at the stove, flipping something that smelled like toast a little too well done. He looked up and gave a small nod. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied, voice still raspy from sleep. Sophie climbed into a chair and kicked her feet against the legs of the table. "Dad burns toast every Saturday," she said matter-of-factly. "It's a tradition." Adam glanced over his shoulder. "Only when I'm distracted." He set 3 plates on the table, toast, eggs, and a few apple slices. Linda hesitated. "You didn't have to." "You're here," Adam said simply. "You should eat." So she sat. They ate quietly at first. Sophie chatted between bites, telling Linda about her bunny named Carrot, her favorite crayon color green, not pink, and how she once saw a raccoon on the porch. Linda listened, smiling without realizing it. After a few minutes, she offered to make another round of toast. Adam raised an eyebrow but handed her the loaf. She turned the dial, waited, and burnt it. "Oops," she muttered, pulling the charred slice out. Sophie giggled. "Now it's your turn to burn it." Adam took the toast, buttered it calmly, and ate every bite without a word. Then he quietly made another batch, for Sophie. Linda watched him. No lecture, no teasing, just acceptance. She couldn't remember the last time someone let her get something wrong and didn't use it as proof she wasn't good enough. After breakfast, Linda offered to help clean up. Adam just shook his head. "You're a guest." "I don't feel like one," she said softly. He met her eyes. "Good." The morning light spilled through the small kitchen window. Everything felt quiet, but not empty. Linda leaned against the counter, holding her warm mug in both hands. "They always looked at me like I was a brand," she said suddenly. "Like I had to be perfect all the time. But you looked at me like I was just a person." Adam didn't say anything. He just nodded, like he understood more than she'd said. Linda cleared her throat. "I know this is unusual, but would it be okay if I stayed 2 more nights? I told a friend where I am. She's trying to figure things out. I'll be out of your way." Adam took a moment before answering. Then, "Couch is still yours." Linda exhaled, a quiet breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said. He gave another nod and turned back to rinse a plate. That day, nothing dramatic happened. But to Linda, it didn't feel small. It felt like breathing without holding something in. Like being part of a normal morning without pretending. Like something steady, even if temporary. And sometimes, that's all a person needs to start feeling like themselves again. Linda didn't expect to last a whole day at the laundromat. The place smelled like detergent and old socks. The owner, Mrs. Dorsey, was kind but blunt. The customers weren't mean, exactly, just impatient. Linda had never handled a broken coin machine before, or folded clothes that weren't hers, or figured out how to get detergent out from under her nails. On her 3rd day, A man in a damp jacket snapped at her for giving him the wrong change. She apologized, flustered, trying to fix it, but his tone had already cut too deep. By the time her shift ended, her back ached from all the bending, and her hands were red and raw. She walked out behind the building and leaned against the wall, biting her lip to keep the tears in. It wasn't the work. It was the way the smallest mistake made her feel like a failure again. That night, she didn't say much over dinner. It was just instant noodles and some chopped carrots. Sophie told a story about a bird she saw, complete with sound effects. Adam listened, nodding occasionally, mostly focused on his bowl. When Sophie ran off to brush her teeth, Linda stayed seated, staring into her nearly empty cup. Adam glanced at her. "Rough day?" She nodded. He didn't ask for details, didn't offer any speeches, just said, "You earned today. That matters." She looked at him. He meant it. Simple as that. No pity, no applause, just quiet respect. For someone like Linda, who'd spent years in rooms where nothing was ever enough, that sentence landed deep. Later that evening, Linda helped Sophie pick out pajamas and read her a bedtime story. Something about a bear who couldn't fall asleep unless the stars were just right. Sophie asked Linda to stay for just one more page, and when she finally drifted off, Linda lingered a little longer, watching the slow rise and fall of her breathing. In the hallway, Adam was folding laundry. "You're good with her," he said without looking up. "She makes it easy," Linda replied, then added, "You do too." Adam gave a half smile and kept folding. The days passed like that, quiet, steady, real. Linda started to get better at the laundromat. She learned how to fix a jam dryer without panicking. She even got a customer to smile once, Mrs. Dorsey gave her a nod of approval one afternoon that made her feel prouder than any award she'd ever received. She still messed up, still got tired, still had moments when her hands shook after a long shift, but she kept showing up. Each evening, she came home to a house that wasn't hers, but didn't feel foreign anymore. She'd sit at the same small table, eat simple meals with two people who never asked her to be anything more than who she was in that moment. There were no camera flashes, no press events, no expensive wine. Just tap water, laughter, elbows on the table, a little girl's drawings taped to the fridge. And something else Linda had never realized she missed, the sound of her own voice when it wasn't rehearsed. One night, after a long shift and a longer bath, Linda stood by the window, watching the porch light flicker slightly in the breeze. The rain had stopped. The sky was dark, but peaceful. Adam walked in with a blanket over his shoulder, ready to crash after a double shift. He paused when he saw her standing there, quiet. "You okay?" Linda turned to him and smiled softly. "Yeah," she said. "Just thinking." "About?" She hesitated, then whispered more to herself than to him, "Maybe this is what living feels like." Adam didn't answer. He didn't need to. She turned back to the window, and for the first time in years, she felt grounded, not by where she was, but by who she was finally becoming. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Linda was helping out at the laundromat. Business was slow, so she offered to wash her own load in one of the back machines. Adam had stopped by to fix a stubborn spin cycle. He was just about to leave when something slipped from Linda's jacket pocket as she folded it. It hit the tile with a soft clink. Adam looked down. A necklace, thin, gold, with a small diamond pendant, subtle but clearly expensive. Cartier. He'd seen one like it before, in magazines, never in person. Linda froze. Then, slowly, she bent to pick it up and curled it into her hand. Adam said nothing. She waited, but he didn't look at her. Just wiped his hands on a rag, gave a brief nod to Mrs. Dorsey, and walked out into the afternoon light. That night, the kitchen felt quieter than usual. Sophie had gone to bed early. Adam stood at the sink, rinsing out 2 mugs. Linda sat at the table, her fingers circling the rim of her cup. She had wanted to explain, but hadn't found the words. He spoke first. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said, not turning. "But I won't pretend I didn't see it." Linda nodded slowly. "I didn't mean for it to fall out." "I know. My name really is Linda," she said, "but I haven't been completely honest." Adam turned and leaned against the counter. "I come from a different world," she said. "Gated driveways, charity dinners, staged smiles. My life was press releases and approval ratings. I grew up learning to pose, not speak." She looked up at him. "I wasn't hurt," she added quickly. "Not in the way people expect. Just managed. I was a brand before I was a person." Adam didn't speak, his expression unreadable. "I left," she continued. "No one thought I would, not even me, but I woke up one day and didn't recognize the girl I was pretending to be." She opened her hand and laid the necklace on the table. The diamond caught the light. "I should have left it behind, or sold it, but I kept it like proof that I wasn't making it up, that I had lived that life once." Still, Adam didn't speak. "I wasn't trying to fool you," Linda said. "I just wanted to breathe. No cameras, no image, just space to exist." He finally said, "You could have told me. I didn't think you'd believe me. Or maybe I was afraid everything would change." A long pause filled the room. Adam picked up the necklace, turned it over, then set it back down. "You're not the only one who's ever wanted to be someone else," he said. Linda blinked. "Are you mad?" He shook his head. "No, just thinking." "But I broke something," she said. "Didn't I?" He met her eyes. "Maybe. But you were honest tonight. That matters." Then he turned back to the sink, rinsing the last mug. Linda stayed seated, the necklace still on the table. For the first time in days, she didn't know where she stood with him. But maybe that was fair. Trust, she realized, isn't something you win and keep forever. It has to be chosen, especially after it cracks. She stood up, quietly wrapped the necklace in a napkin, and placed it in her bag. No more lifelines. Just life. The laundromat was quieter than usual that Tuesday morning. Linda stood behind the folding table, sleeves rolled up, sorting through warm towels that smelled faintly of lavender and steam. Her hair was pulled into a low ponytail, strands loose around her face. She was finally finding rhythm in the work, predictable, grounding. The bell above the door jingled. She didn't look up at first, expecting a regular, but something shifted. The quiet confidence of someone who wasn't there to do laundry. She glanced up and froze. A man stood just inside, black leather jacket, baseball cap pulled low. He held no laundry, just purpose. Then, too casually, he lifted his phone. Click. The sound snapped through her. Click. She stepped back. "Linda Whitmore," he said, not loud, but firm. "Gotcha." Before she could react, Adam appeared. He had just come in from the back with a bag of clean linens. When he heard the name, he moved fast. In one smooth step, he positioned himself between Linda and the man, body squared, voice low. "Put the phone down." The man smirked. "Easy, man. Just doing my job. Her family's—" I said, "Put it down." The stranger hesitated, lowering the phone a little. "You don't even know who she is, do you?" Adam didn't blink. "I don't need to, but I know what kind of man hides behind a lens in a laundromat." The man backed up slightly, still eyeing Linda. "6 figures for a photo. That's all. No harm." Adam said nothing. He grabbed Linda's hand. "Let's go." They ducked through the side door, slipping into the alley behind the shop. Rain had begun again, light but steady. It soaked her sweater as they ran across the back lot. Linda was trembling. Not from the cold, from the sound of her name, spoken aloud, dragging the truth out of hiding. At the curb, Adam slowed. "You okay?" She nodded, barely. "Wait here. I'm getting Sophie." Before she could speak, he was gone. Minutes later, he returned with Sophie bundled in her jacket, half asleep but calm. He lifted her into the truck, buckled her in, and handed her a juice box from the glove compartment. Then he looked at Linda. "We're dropping her with Mrs. Johnson. She's next door. You'll like her. Bakes great cookies." At the yellow house down the street, Mrs. Johnson was already at the door. Adam must have called her. The older woman smiled gently, took Sophie's hand, and nodded. Adam turned to Linda. "She's safe." Back in the truck, they pulled away from the laundromat and down a quiet street. Linda stared out the window, hands clenched. Adam didn't ask who she really was. He didn't ask why someone would pay for her photo. He just drove. Then, quietly, he said, "You don't owe me answers right now. You just need to be safe." That was it. No pressure, no questions, just protection, offered freely. Linda turned to him. In the soft light, his profile was calm, but his grip on the wheel was tight, like a man who'd made a choice and would not back away. Something broke in her, not fear, but a kind of release. A tear slid down her cheek. No one had ever stood between her and danger before, not without wanting something in return, not without knowing her name. Adam had nothing. A small house, a quiet job, a daughter he loved more than life. And somehow, he'd just given her the one thing no money had ever bought. Safety. Without demand. Without condition. Not knowing who he was protecting. And somehow, that made it mean even more. The knock came just after sundown. Linda was rinsing dishes in the kitchen. Sophie was humming quietly in the living room, coloring at the small table Adam had built from leftover plywood. The house felt peaceful in that moment. Small, but warm. Adam answered the door. On the porch stood a man in a tailored overcoat, his silver hair combed neatly back, polished shoes untouched by the muddy sidewalk. His presence didn't just fill the doorway, it pushed into the house like a cold front. Linda froze. "Dad," she whispered, water dripping from her hands into the sink. Mr. Whitman's eyes swept past Adam, landing directly on his daughter. "So this is where you've been hiding." Adam didn't move. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for my daughter," Mr. Whitman said crisply. "She's coming with me." "I'm not a suitcase, Dad," Linda said, stepping forward. He ignored her. His eyes moved around the small room, cheap furniture, drawings on the fridge, a second-hand bookshelf filled with children's books. "This is what you traded everything for?" he asked, incredulous. "A maintenance man's living room and a child's leftovers?" Linda's face paled. Adam stayed calm. He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. "She came here because she didn't feel safe in the world you built around her," he said simply. "She wasn't safe because of money. She was safe because she was treated like a person." Mr. Whitman's jaw tightened. "You think offering her a couch and warm water makes you a hero? Do you have any idea who she is?" "I didn't," Adam said. "Still don't really. Doesn't change a thing." Linda's hands trembled at her sides. She looked between them, two men who couldn't be more different. One who had given her everything money could buy. One who had offered her nothing but honesty, kindness, and the quiet permission to be herself. "You've made your point," she told her father quietly. "Then come home," he said, taking a step forward. "I'm not your investment," she replied. "No," he said coldly, "but you're my responsibility. And this is beneath you." She looked at Adam. His eyes didn't beg her to stay. He didn't speak. He simply stood still, letting her choose. Sophie peeked out from the hallway, sensing the tension. Linda caught her gaze, wide, soft, trusting. That was the hardest part, because Linda knew what would come next. Her father wouldn't stop. He would send lawyers, investigators, spin stories. Adam and Sophie would become collateral damage in a media circus they never asked for. She couldn't do that to them. even if it meant walking away. She turned back to her father. "Let's go." "Linda," Adam started. She shook her head, her voice cracking. "If I stay, I drag you and Sophie into something you never asked for." "You don't have to go," he said, stepping forward. "But I should." Mr. Whitman turned and walked toward the waiting Blacktown car at the curb. Linda followed slowly, every step heavier than the last. At the doorway, she turned back. "I didn't leave because I hated my life," she said softly. "I left because I hated who I was becoming inside it." Adam didn't answer. She met his eyes for a long second, something unspoken passing between them. Then she looked at Sophie and forced a small smile. "Be good, sunshine." Sophie ran toward her, wrapped her arms around Linda's waist. Linda knelt down and kissed the top of her head. Then she stood up and left. The door closed behind her, not with a slam but with a quiet finality. Adam stood there for a long time, unmoving. Then he walked to the window and watched the car drive off, the taillights fading into the night. The house felt colder than before, not because of the weather, but because of what was no longer inside it. The fever came suddenly. Sophie had seemed tired after school, quieter than usual. Adam thought it was just a long day, but by midnight, her forehead was burning and she could barely keep her eyes open. He wrapped her in a blanket, carried her to the truck, and drove to the nearest emergency clinic, trying not to panic. The hospital lights were bright, too clean, too far from anything familiar. He stood at the reception desk holding his shivering daughter in his arms. "She's burning up," he said. "I think it's a high fever." The nurse nodded and motioned for another to take Sophie to triage. Adam hesitated for just a second before letting go. The hallway swallowed her small body and her tired eyes. The woman behind the counter turned to him. "Do you have insurance?" I do, but it's minimal," Adam said, his voice dry. "I can pay some now, but for admission and tests, we require a $2,500 deposit," she said firmly. "Up front." Adam blinked. "I don't have that, but I can. Please, she needs help. She's 6. "I'm sorry," the woman said, softer this time. "It's policy." Adam felt the floor shift beneath him. He looked toward the hallway, fists clenching at his sides. For a moment, all the years of doing his best, working night shifts, saving every dollar, meant nothing in the face of that number. Then, from behind him, a voice cut through the tension. "I've got it." He turned sharply. Linda stood at the front doors, rain dampening her coat, eyes calm, purposeful. She walked up to the desk without hesitation, pulled out a black leather wallet, and handed the nurse a card. "Put everything under my name. Admission, tests, treatment, all of it." The nurse glanced at Adam, then back at Linda. "Relationship to the patient?" Linda looked straight at the woman and said without a pause, "Family." Adam was speechless. She didn't look at him right away, just took the receipt, signed the form, and handed it back. Then she turned, slowly, and met his eyes. He was still standing there, silent, stunned, searching for the right words and failing. He began, his voice cracking. But she shook her head, stepping closer. "You protected me without knowing who I was," she said gently. "This time I'm protecting you, knowing exactly who you are." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hallway buzzed quietly. Machines beeped softly in the background. Somewhere, a nurse paged a doctor over the intercom. But here, in this small space between them, everything else faded. Adam reached for her hand. She took it. No apology, no thank you. Just fingers curling into each other like they'd always belonged. "You didn't have to come back," he finally said, voice low. "I did," Linda replied. "I just didn't know when until now." They sat together in the waiting room, side by side, hands still joined. An hour later, the doctor came out. "She's going to be fine. Just a virus. We'll keep her overnight to monitor the fever." Adam exhaled in relief, leaning his head back against the wall. Linda touched his arm gently. "You okay?" He looked at her, really looked. Not as the girl who had shown up on his doorstep in the rain, or the daughter of a man with too much power, but as someone who had chosen this place, this life, this moment. For the first time, it felt like they weren't strangers reaching across two different worlds. They were something else. Something closer. Something that felt like family. The penthouse was still the same. The same marble floors that echoed every footstep. The same tall windows that overlooked a city that never slept. But Linda didn't walk in like the frightened daughter who had once been afraid to raise her voice. This time, she walked in with her back straight and her heart steady. Her father stood by the window, a glass of aged scotch in his hand. "You came back," he said without turning. "I didn't come back," she replied. "I came to say what I never got to say." Winston Whitman turned then, his eyes sharp. "You've made your point, Linda. You've had your adventure. Now it's time to come home." "I am home," she said softly. He frowned. "That house? That man?" She nodded. "That man, that life, that's where I learned who I am." "You're my daughter," he said. "You were raised to lead, not to serve coffee and fold laundry." Linda took a breath. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. "I'm not rejecting your love," she said. "I'm just choosing to define myself." He looked at her for a long moment, like he was seeing her for the first time. "I can't support this life you've chosen." She smiled, not bitter, just honest. "You don't have to. You just have to understand that I finally can." Winston didn't stop her as she left. He didn't hug her, didn't call her back. But for once, she didn't need him to. Because she wasn't walking away to escape. She was walking towards something real. 1 year later. The Saturday morning sun spilled over the small food stand at the corner of Brookside and Maple. A wooden sign hand-painted by a local artist read, "Brooks & Co. Weekend Breakfast." Adam stood at the grill, flipping pancakes with quiet focus. Linda, her hair tied loosely at the nape of her neck, handed out coffee with a calm, practiced grace. Their hands brushed once, and they smiled like it was still new. Behind the counter, Sophie sat on a stool with a notebook in her lap, scribbling furiously. She was writing her school essay. Her title read, "The Night My Dad Opened the Door." And her first sentence was, "My dad opened the door for one night, but love stayed forever." Linda paused as she read over Sophie's shoulder. Her heart tugged in the gentlest way. She kissed the girl's forehead. "That's beautiful," she whispered. Sophie beamed. "It's true." Later that evening, after the last customer left and the stand was packed away, the three of them walked home. The air was cool, and a soft drizzle had begun to fall. At their porch, Adam reached for Linda's hand. She took it, fingers threading through his, warm and familiar. They stood at the same spot where, exactly 1 year ago, a soaking wet girl had knocked on a stranger's door. Back then, the rain had been cold. Back then, they had been strangers. Now, the rain was light, almost gentle, and no one was cold anymore. Linda leaned her head on Adam's shoulder. Home didn't need chandeliers or grand entrances. Sometimes, it just needed a couch, a warm drink, and someone who saw you for who you really were. Not a brand, not a trophy, just a person. The porch light flickered on behind them. Adam looked at her and smiled. "Ready to go in?" Linda squeezed his hand. "I already am." If this story warmed your heart, don't forget to give it a hype and share it with someone who still believes in second chances and quiet kindness. At Soul Stirring Stories, we tell the kind of tales that don't need grand gestures, just real people, honest love, and moments that matter. Subscribe now to never miss a story that might just stay with you long after it ends. Because sometimes, the softest voices tell the strongest truths. See you in the next one.